are
They're leaning in.
Or what?
They're leaning into woke. Hardcore.
They're petrified
Yeah.
of some kind of backlash. I mean, you see with Disney now. I mean, Disney, one of the most gay-friendly companies that we've had in a very long time.
Yeah, movie companies are going to look at her and they're going to say box office poison. And it's a lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
So with Snow White, let's go through this, right? There's no prince. Woman doesn't need a prince.
Oh, Lord.
Really? Okay, good luck back then.
Remember Snow White, that timeless fairy tale, the very bedrock of Disney's magical kingdom? Well, buckle up, because Disney decided to give this classic a 2025 makeover, and what happened next wasn't enchanting, it was a full-blown cinematic train wreck. Instead of a happily ever after, we got a PR disaster, a box office bomb, and a whole lot of bewildered and frankly angry fans. This isn't just a case of a few critics being picky. The backlash against this remake was a tidal wave, leaving many to wonder if Disney had completely lost its connection to the magic that made them, well, Disney.
And Disney decided to hire the most insufferable girl boss narcissist that exists on Earth, who hates Snow White.
The signs of trouble weren't exactly hidden in a poisoned apple. They were flashing neon from the very beginning. Even before the film was released, a strange unease began to bubble amongst movie fans. Rumors of a troubled production, whispers of creative clashes. Something felt off. But it was the release of the trailers that truly detonated the online outrage. Almost instantly, the internet became a battleground. Dislike buttons on YouTube got a serious workout. Comment sections transformed into digital shouting matches, and a general sense of disappointment permeated every corner of the online movie community. It wasn't just mild skepticism, it was a wave of negativity that crashed down hard, signaling to anyone paying attention that this Snow White was heading for an iceberg, and fast. And this initial storm was just the prelude to what was coming.
There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
One of the first and perhaps most debated changes was the deliberate sidelining of Prince Charming. The remake's narrative made it clear, this Snow White wasn't waiting for a rescue. She was on a journey of self-discovery, finding her inner voice, becoming a leader, all very modern, very independent. While some championed this as progress, a significant portion of the audience felt a pang of loss. They argued that in the rush to update, something essential had been sacrificed. The very fairy tale charm, the romance, the wish fulfillment that made Snow White so enduring. The question hung in the air. In trying to be relevant, had Disney inadvertently severed the very threads that connected audiences to these classic stories across generations? Had they, in their zeal to modernize, forgotten what made the original magical in the first place?
He doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
Then entered Rachel Zegler, the film's lead, and things took another sharp turn, this time into controversy. In interviews leading up to the release, Zegler made comments that ignited a firestorm. She repeatedly described the iconic 1937 animated film as outdated, even scoffing at its romantic elements. For many, especially those who held the original Snow White dear to their hearts, these weren't just opinions. They felt like a direct dismissal, a disrespect towards a beloved piece of cinematic history and Disney's own legacy. The backlash was immediate and intense. Fans felt their childhood memories, their nostalgic connection to Disney were being trampled on, and perhaps adding insult to injury, Disney itself remained largely silent, seemingly unwilling or unable to address the growing storm of discontent. This silence was interpreted by many as tacit approval, further alienating loyal fans and deepening the sense of a studio out of touch with its audience.
To go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control over it.
If the Prince and Zegler controversies weren't enough, then came the saga of the 7 dwarfs, or more accurately, the not quite dwarfs. Initially, Disney announced plans to replace the traditional dwarfs with vaguely defined magical creatures. This decision was met with immediate outcry, not from nostalgic purists this time, but from the dwarfism community itself. Actors with dwarfism spoke out, powerfully arguing that this move was not progressive, but rather erased opportunities for authentic representation. Faced with this unexpected and valid criticism, Disney backpedaled clumsily. The final film featured CGI characters that sort of resembled dwarfs, but lacked any real human presence. The result? A visual and conceptual mess. Critics panned the CGI dwarfs as lifeless, soulless, and frankly unsettling. What started as an attempt to be sensitive and avoid perceived stereotypes ended up as another major misstep, pleasing no one and further highlighting a series of questionable decisions that seemed to plague the entire production.
This girl took the money and then decided that she wanted to go out there and, you know what, I'm going to take my stand. Well, you should have made that stand before you took the money to promote a film, because that's not in line with your job description.
Beyond the plot changes and casting storms, something even more fundamental seemed to be amiss: the very spirit of Snow White. Viewers who finally saw the film described a protagonist drastically different from the gentle, innocent, and kind-hearted heroine they remembered. This new Snow White was portrayed by some as, well, a bit abrasive, self-assured, even lecturing towards other characters. She seemed to have lost the core warmth and vulnerability that made the original so relatable across generations. The contrast with the 1937 animation was stark. Instead of a character audiences naturally rooted for, this Snow White, in the eyes of many, became unlikable. Some critics even quipped that she came across as harsher and less sympathetic than the evil queen herself. This fundamental shift in character portrayal was perhaps the most damaging of all, as it undermined the emotional core of the story and further alienated audiences who felt they were watching something that was Snow White in name only.
Right. I think this is their policies coming back to bite them. They went woke.
Yeah.
She went out and said stuff woke that was going to hurt the film. They couldn't come out and go against her, because then you're going after somebody for saying what you say you believe.
The Snow White remake didn't just become a failed movie, it morphed into a symbol of something much larger: Disney's apparent struggle to navigate the treacherous waters of modern cultural expectations. It became a focal point in the ongoing debate about wokeness versus timeless storytelling. The film's disastrous reception ignited a crucial question. Had Disney, in its pursuit of contemporary relevance and social messaging, lost its way? Had the studio become so fixated on reflecting current cultural trends that it had forgotten the fundamental principles of engaging, emotionally resonant storytelling that had been its hallmark for decades? The box office numbers and the overwhelmingly negative audience response seemed to scream a resounding yes! The Snow White debacle forced a critical examination of Disney's direction, raising profound questions about its future. Could it recapture the magic that had defined it for generations, or was this remake a harbinger of a new, less enchanting era? Was this a wake-up call for Hollywood? A stark illustration of the risks of tampering too much with beloved classics in the name of modernization?
But at the same time, I think going forward, they're going to be like, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
Tight-lipped. Otherwise, guess what? We're clawing back some money.
Yeah. This would have been a lot better if they, had a strong male along with her.
Amidst all the swirling controversies, there was one element that initially generated genuine excitement: the casting of Gal Gadot as the evil queen. Known for her charisma and screen presence, Gadot seemed like a potentially inspired choice to bring a fresh take to the iconic villain. Early glimpses and trailers hinted at a glamorous and perhaps even subtly sympathetic evil queen, a departure from the purely wicked stepmother of the original. However, as the negative buzz around the film intensified, Gadot's potential contribution seemed to get lost in the shuffle. Did her performance get unfairly overshadowed by the surrounding controversies? Was there a chance that a compelling evil queen, brilliantly portrayed, could have been a saving grace, a point of redemption in an otherwise troubled production? It's a tantalizing what if. Perhaps in a different context, with a more cohesive film overall, Gadot's evil queen could have been a standout success. Instead, her performance, like so much else in this remake, became just another element overshadowed by the film's mounting problems, a missed opportunity in a sea of missteps.
I think they could have done all that woke shit. You want to call woke? They could have done all that still. And as long as she had gone out and been like, well, we just have a different story. I like the old story, but we're doing a different one this time.
You're probably right.
The backlash would have been 10 times.
Yes.
You're probably right.
Let's not sugarcoat it. The Snow White remake was a box office disaster. It didn't just underperform, it bombed spectacularly. Against a substantial production and marketing budget, the film's theatrical run yielded dismal returns, falling far short of expectations and likely resulting in significant financial losses for Disney. In the cold, hard reality of Hollywood, creative missteps often translate directly into red ink, and Snow White became a prime example. This wasn't just about bruised egos or critical pans, it was about real money, potentially millions, vanishing as audiences stayed away in droves. The financial failure served as a stark and undeniable metric of the film's reception, a brutal confirmation that the creative and PR missteps had real-world consequences. Beyond the immediate financial hit, such a high-profile flop can also damage a studio's reputation, making future projects riskier and further fueling questions about Disney's current direction and decision-making processes. The wreckage of the Snow White remake raises a crucial question. Will Disney, and indeed Hollywood as a whole, actually learn anything from this? Will this be a turning point, prompting a genuine reevaluation of how classic stories are approached in the modern era? Or will the lessons of Snow White be ignored, chalked up to a fluke, and business continue as usual? The film's failure has undoubtedly sent ripples through the industry, sparking conversations about balancing nostalgia with innovation, respecting source material while attempting to update it for contemporary audiences. Perhaps studios will become more cautious, more thoughtful in their approach to beloved properties. Maybe there will be a renewed emphasis on story and character over simply checking diversity boxes or chasing fleeting trends. Or perhaps in the relentless churn of the entertainment machine, the lessons of Snow White will fade and the cycle of remakes and reimaginings, with all their inherent risks, will continue unabated. The future of Disney's classic adaptations, and indeed the future of how Hollywood handles cherished stories, may well hinge on whether the industry truly grasps the cautionary tale embedded in the Snow White saga. A tale of good intentions gone awry, and the very real consequences of losing touch with the magic that audiences crave. Like and subscribe.